The galaxy was vast, and many alien species had conquered planets, ruled over them with iron fists. Earth had been no exception. The aliens believed humans were primitive, too weak to challenge their mighty empire. They never knew the one thing about humanity: never push us too far. It began on a cold winter night. The alien fleet arrived in the sky above Earth. Thousands of ships, each larger than anything humanity had ever seen, covered the skies. The people of Earth thought it was the end. The aliens, with their glowing eyes and advanced weapons, showed no mercy. They didn't care about diplomacy. Earth was just another world to be conquered. For the first few months, Earth's governments and military forces tried to resist. They fought bravely, but the aliens were too powerful. Their weapons disintegrated tanks with a single blast, and their soldiers were faster and stronger than any human. The alien race, known as the Triumphants, set up their own rule. The humans were forced into cities controlled by the invaders, and their resources were harvested for the aliens' empire. But there was one thing the aliens didn't understand. The humans, even in the darkest of times, never gave up. There was a fire within them, a will to fight for their freedom. As the months passed, the people of Earth, under the leadership of a strong woman named Eva, began to organize in secret. Eva was a military strategist before the invasion. She had seen the cruelty of the aliens and knew they were vulnerable. It wasn't their technology or strength that would bring their downfall, it was their arrogance. The Triumphants thought humans were weak, too small to challenge them. They didn't realize that the humans were resilient, that when pushed, they would fight back in ways the aliens never expected. Eva and her group, known as the Resistance, started by gathering survivors. They didn't have much, just old weapons, some makeshift bombs, and a lot of determination. They learned the Triumphants' weaknesses, how their ships could be disabled, how their soldiers could be tricked. The humans used their environment to their advantage, hiding in underground bunkers and forests, launching surprise attacks on the alien patrols. Months passed, and the resistance grew stronger. They managed to disable several Triumphan ships, stealing their technology and using it against them. The aliens, surprised by the sudden uprisings, sent more troops, but they were unprepared for the human tactics. The Triumphans had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. Eva's group had a plan, and they were ready to put it into action. One day, after weeks of careful preparation, the Resistance launched their largest attack yet. They infiltrated the main Triumphan base in the capital city. The aliens thought they had finally tracked down the rebels and were preparing for the final assault. But as they stormed the city streets, they were met with an unexpected force, humans armed with weapons that could destroy their ships, hidden in plain sight. The Triumphans were caught off guard. The streets of the city were filled with explosions, gunfire, and chaos. Eva led her team into the heart of the alien stronghold, determined to send a message. The Resistance fought with everything they had. They didn't care about death or failure. They cared about freedom. And they knew the aliens had pushed them too far. As the battle raged on, the Triumphans began to panic. They had never seen humans fight like this. Their soldiers, once so confident, were falling at an alarming rate. The aliens' once indestructible ships were now vulnerable to human-made weapons. In the heat of the battle, Eva found herself face to face with the Triumphan commander, a towering figure whose eyes glowed like burning coals. He sneered at her. "You cannot win," the commander said, his voice deep and cold. Eva stood tall, her voice steady. "You've pushed us too far, and now we'll make you regret it." With a single command, the Resistance detonated a massive EMP device that disabled the alien fleet in orbit. The Triumphan ships, once so powerful, fell from the sky like falling stars. The humans had won. The alien commander tried to escape, but it was too late. Eva and her team had already taken control of the central control tower. The humans had used their strength, their will to survive, and their unity to defeat an enemy that had believed they were unbeatable. In the days that followed, Earth celebrated its victory. The Triumphans were forced to leave, humiliated by their defeat. But the victory came at a cost. Many lives had been lost. Cities had been destroyed. But humans, no matter the price, had fought for their freedom. They had stood up to the alien invaders and shown them that when you push humans too far, you wake up something unstoppable. The Tyrathians learned a lesson they would never forget. The humans were not just a species to conquer, they were a force to be reckoned with, and they would never again underestimate the power of defiance. The sky was covered with ships, massive war vessels from another world. The invaders were the Exalrith, a species that had conquered countless planets before setting their eyes on Earth. They believed that Earth's people were primitive, weak, and easy to defeat. They couldn't have been more wrong. The first attacks were swift and brutal. Cities were reduced to rubble, and entire populations were enslaved. The human armies, despite their best efforts, were no match for the advanced weapons of the Exalrith. Earth's governments and military forces fell, and the world was thrown into darkness. But in that darkness, a spark of resistance was born. The heart of this rebellion was a man named Ryan, a former soldier who had lost everything to the invaders. His family was taken by the Exalrith, his city destroyed, and his country left in ruins. But Ryan wasn't ready to give up. He gathered survivors, farmers, scientists, teachers, and soldiers, all united by the same goal: to drive the Exalrith off their home planet. They called themselves the Last Stand. Ryan knew the task ahead was impossible. The Exalrith were too powerful, their technology far beyond anything humans had. But humans had something the invaders didn't: the will to survive. And Ryan believed that if they could learn from the Exalrith, they could turn the tide. For months, Ryan and his group gathered information. They studied the alien technology, learning how their weapons worked and how to use them against the Exalrith. They knew their chances were slim, but they had no choice. If they failed, Earth would be lost forever. The Last Stand launched their first strike on one of the Exalrith's supply bases. It was a small victory, but it sent a message: humanity was not giving up without a fight. The Exalrith didn't take the attack seriously, dismissing it as a minor setback. But Ryan and his group knew they had to keep pushing. Each victory, no matter how small, brought them closer to their goal. As the months went by, the resistance grew stronger. The humans had begun to fight smarter, using the Exalrith's own tactics against them. They struck from the shadows, using guerrilla warfare and sabotage to weaken the invaders. The Exalrith began to realize that Earth's humans were not as weak as they had believed. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and survive. But the war was far from over. The Exalrith, frustrated by their failures, launched a full-scale attack on the remaining human strongholds. The Last Stand knew this was their moment. If they were to defeat the Exalrith, they needed to strike at the heart of the alien forces. Ryan led his team to the Exalrith's main command center, located deep within a heavily guarded fortress. It was a dangerous mission, and everyone knew it might be their last. But the humans were ready. They fought their way through the fortress, battling alien soldiers and dodging deadly traps. Each step forward was hard-earned, and every loss made their mission feel more urgent. As they approached the command center, Ryan could feel the weight of the moment. This was their last chance. If they failed, Earth would fall, and humanity would be wiped out. But the closer they got, the more determined they became. They had nothing left to lose. Finally, they reached the heart of the fortress, the control room where the Exalrith commander stood, overseeing the destruction of Earth. The commander, a towering figure, looked at Ryan with cold, calculating eyes. "You think you can win?" he sneered. "You are nothing compared to us." Ryan stood tall, his voice steady. "We may be nothing compared to you, but we're willing to fight for everything we have. And we will win." With those words, the battle began. The Last Stand fought with everything they had. Each blow they struck fueled by the memory of their lost loved ones, their fallen comrades, and the hope that they could still save their world. The Exalrith were powerful, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. In the heat of the battle, Ryan reached the Exalrith commander. They clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand fight, each one fighting for survival. The commander was strong, but Ryan was fueled by desperation and the knowledge that the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. With a final, decisive blow, Ryan brought the commander to the ground. But the war was not over yet. The Axareth fleet, now in disarray, began to retreat, but their ships were still a threat. Ryan knew they had one final weapon, the stolen technology they had been working on for months. With the help of the resistance scientists, they activated the EMP device, disabling the remaining alien ships. The humans had won. The Axareth, once so sure of their victory, were forced to retreat. Earth had been saved. But the victory came at a cost. Many lives had been lost, and the planet was scarred from the war. Yet humanity had proven something that day. No matter how dark the times, no matter how powerful the enemy, they would always fight for their survival. As Ryan stood amidst the ruins of the battle, looking out over the horizon, he knew one thing for certain: the Axareth had learned the greatest lesson of all. Never underestimate humanity. Because when the last stand is made, humanity will always rise again. The stars above Earth twinkled like tiny lights in a vast, empty sky. But for the humans on the planet below, the sky was anything but empty. It was filled with ships, massive, glowing vessels that blotted out the sun. The alien race known as the Arakali had come to Earth, and they had no intention of leaving. They thought humans were weak, that Earth would fall without a fight. But they underestimated one thing: humans never gave up. The Arakali had invaded without warning. Their ships appeared over Earth's major cities, and with one strike, they wiped out entire fleets of human aircraft. The military tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless against the alien technology. For weeks, the humans were powerless. Every day, the Arakali made their presence known. The people of Earth lived in fear, unsure if they would ever see another sunrise. But there was one thing the Arakali did not understand about humans. The more they tried to break them, the stronger they became. A small group of survivors, led by a former soldier named Leo, refused to accept defeat. They had lost everything: homes, loved ones, cities, but they hadn't lost their will to fight. Leo had been a soldier before the invasion, a leader among his people. Now, he was a symbol of hope for those who had nowhere else to turn. He gathered a group of fighters from all walks of life: scientists, engineers, farmers, even civilians, and formed a resistance movement. They called themselves the Strikers. Leo knew that they were outmatched. The Arakali had technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. But the Strikers had one advantage: they knew their own planet. The Arakali were strong, but they didn't understand Earth's environment, its weather, or its people. Leo and his group began to strike back, launching guerrilla attacks on the alien invaders. The first attack was a small victory, but it was enough to send a message. The Strikers had taken down one of the Arakali's supply stations. The alien invaders were caught off guard. They didn't expect humans to fight back, let alone win. But Leo's group had learned how to use their environment to their advantage, hiding in forests and mountains, striking quickly and retreating before the Arakali could retaliate. They used Earth's weather to their advantage, launching surprise attacks during storms or fog, making it difficult for the Arakali to track them. As the weeks passed, the Strikers' victories began to add up. They managed to sabotage more Arakali ships, steal alien weapons, and even capture a few of the invaders for interrogation. The Arakali, once so confident in their superiority, started to realize that humans were not as weak as they had assumed. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. The Strikers grew stronger with each victory, and soon they were not just hiding in the shadows. They were taking the fight to the Arakali, attacking their bases, their communication hubs, and their supply lines. With each successful strike, the Strikers gained more supporters, and their numbers swelled. The Arakali could no longer ignore them. But the aliens were not easily defeated. Realizing the human resistance was growing, the Arakali launched a massive counterattack, sending hundreds of ships to Earth's surface. The Strikers were outnumbered, and for the first time, Leo felt doubt. They were not ready for a battle of this scale. But he knew they had no choice. The fight had come to them. The final showdown was set in the ruins of a once thriving city. The Arakali descended from the sky, their ships casting shadows over the city streets. The Strikers, led by Leo, gathered their forces. They had one shot at this. They could not afford to lose. The city streets were filled with chaos as the Strikers fought with everything they had. Bullets flew, explosions echoed, and the ground shook beneath their feet. As the battle raged on, the strikers managed to take down several alien ships, their explosions lighting up the dark sky. The Arakali forces were thrown into disarray, and for the first time, they realized they were not invincible. The humans were winning. Leo and his team stormed the Arakali Command Center, a massive fortress located in the heart of the city. The Arakali commander, a towering alien with glowing red eyes, awaited them. He sneered at Leo and his team, convinced that their fight was futile. "You think you can defeat us?" The commander hissed, his voice cold and cruel. "We are the Arakali. You are nothing." Leo stood tall, his eyes burning with determination. "We are everything," he said, his voice steady. "We fight for our homes, our families, our world. And we will never stop." With a final push, the strikers broke through the command center's defenses. Leo faced the Arakali commander, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. They fought in a brutal clash of strength and will. The commander was powerful, but Leo's rage and resolve fueled him. With one swift move, Leo defeated the commander, sending him crashing to the ground. The Arakali, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. The strikers had won. The alien invaders, who had thought humanity was weak, had learned the most important lesson of all: when humans fight back, they're unstoppable. As the sun rose over the battlefield, Leo stood among the wreckage of the alien forces. The Earth had been saved, and the strikers had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, humanity would always fight to the end. In a distant part of the galaxy, an alien empire known as the Sorin ruled over many worlds with an iron fist. Their power was unmatched, and their technology was far beyond anything the conquered species had ever seen. When the Sorin set their eyes on the human colonies scattered across the stars, they believed it would be an easy conquest. They came with confidence and cruelty, thinking humans were too small to matter. What the Sorin failed to realize was that there was one rule no one dared to break: never push a people too far. On the surface of a barren colony world, the Sorin established their stronghold. The humans who lived there were forced into labor and made to serve the alien masters. Daily life was harsh, and the aliens ruled with strict and brutal methods. The human spirit, however, was not so easily broken. Hidden among the enslaved, a quiet anger simmered. The Sorin had thought they could bend the humans to their will, but they did not understand that humanity's strength was forged in hardship. A young woman named Mira had watched her family suffer under the Sorin's rule since childhood. She saw friends taken away and communities torn apart. Determined to make a change, Mira began to secretly gather a group of like-minded individuals. They met in the old abandoned tunnels beneath the colony, far from the ever-watchful eyes of the Sorin guards. Their discussions were filled with hope, plans, and the promise of a better future. Mira and her group, calling themselves the Freeborn, started by learning every detail of the Sorin's operations. They studied patrol routes, guard schedules, and the layout of the stronghold. Every piece of information was a tool they could use to their advantage. In small acts of defiance, they sabotaged equipment and disrupted the supply lines that fed the Sorin's war machines. Each act was a quiet rebellion, a crack in the Empire's armor that grew wider with every success. The turning point came when Mira discovered a weakness in the Sorin's power grid. The alien technology was advanced, yet it relied on a central system that could be targeted. With careful planning, the Freeborn devised a bold plan to take down this system. Their objective was not only to disable the technology, but to send a clear message: the Sorin had pushed humans too far, and now they would pay the price. On a moonless night, the Freeborn moved silently through the colony. The group split into teams, each assigned a specific task. Mira led the team that would infiltrate the control center, a fortified building guarded by Sorin soldiers. Every step was dangerous, and tension filled the air. The sound of distant machinery and the occasional clank of a patrol heightened the suspense. The fate of the human colony rested on their success. Inside the control center, Mira's team encountered tight security. They moved quickly, disabling alarms and evading patrols. The corridors were dimly lit, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. At one point, a guard almost caught sight of them. Mira signaled for silence, and the team pressed on with measured caution. Their mission was clear: reach the central power unit and set off the improvised explosive device that would knock out the Soren's network. The tension peaked as they arrived at the control room. The room hummed with energy, a constant reminder of the Soren's dominance. Mira took a deep breath and placed the device on the control panel. In that moment, every plan, every sacrifice, and every dream of freedom was held in the balance. The device blinked to life, and a countdown began. Outside, the rebellion was gathering strength. Other groups of humans, inspired by the Freeborn's bold actions, had begun to rise up. The colony was no longer a quiet place of suffering. It had become a battlefield of hope and resistance. Alarms blared across the compound as the Soren detected the breach. Soldiers scrambled, their orderly formations disrupted by chaos. Back in the control room, Mira's heart pounded as the final seconds ticked away. She exchanged a brief nod with her teammate, who then retreated to cover. The moment of truth arrived. The device exploded in a brilliant flash of light and a deep, echoing boom. The central power system failed, plunging the facility into darkness and silencing the Soren's communication network. The result was immediate and dramatic. Without control over their technology, the Soren forces faltered. Their high-tech weapons powered down, and confusion swept through the alien ranks. In the chaos that followed, the Freeborn and the United Human Rebels surged forward. They stormed the corridors and reclaimed control of the once impenetrable stronghold. The battle was fierce. The Soren, caught off guard by the loss of their command center, fought desperately to restore order. Mira and her allies fought side by side, driven by years of oppression and the desire to reclaim their freedom. Each victory, no matter how small, added to the growing wave of human rebellion. In the end, the Soren were forced to retreat. Their empire had been dealt a crushing blow, a reminder that pushing a people too far could ignite a fire that no one could control. The Freeborn had shown that even in the darkest moments, hope could spark a revolution. As dawn broke over the colony, Mira looked out over a scene of hard-won freedom. The Soren stronghold lay in ruins, and the human spirit shone brightly amid the devastation. The rule that the Soren had thought unbreakable had been shattered. They learned a harsh lesson: never push a people beyond their limit. In the quiet that followed the battle, humanity began to rebuild. They remembered the sacrifice and bravery of those who fought for every inch of freedom. And as they worked to restore their world, they carried with them the unyielding truth that had brought them victory: the rule the Soren broke, and the power that came when humans were finally free. For decades, the alien conquerors known as the Zephyrians ruled Earth from hidden bases across the planet. They came quietly and took over with precision, forcing humanity into small, forgotten enclaves. The world outside their fortified cities became silent, and human voices turned into whispers. But among the forgotten, a spark of rebellion burned quietly, waiting for its moment. In a rundown settlement on the edge of a vast wasteland, a young woman named Sarah lived with a burning desire for freedom. Sarah grew up hearing stories of a time when humans ruled their own fate. Now, with the Zephyrians tightening their grip, those memories were all that sustained the oppressed people. She often walked among the ruins of old cities, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of a future that could be different. Sarah was not alone in her hope. In secret gatherings held in abandoned warehouses and underground hideouts, a small band of rebels met. They called themselves the Forgotten, a name chosen to remind everyone that even those left behind could rise again. Their leader, an older man named Thomas, had once been a respected engineer. After his family was taken away by the Zephyrians, Thomas dedicated his life to planning the day of reckoning. The plan began to take shape when Thomas uncovered a hidden Zephyrian supply route. Using old maps and stolen documents, he discovered that the alien rulers depended on a central power station to control their advanced technology. The power station was located in a remote mountain valley, heavily guarded and shrouded in mystery. It was risky, but Thomas believed that if they could destroy the station, the Zephyrians would lose their hold on Earth. Sarah volunteered immediately. Her resolve was strong, and her determination shone through her clear eyes. She trained every day, learning to use scavenged weapons and old tools modified to become deadly in the hands of a fighter. The plan was simple: infiltrate the power station, plant explosives, and escape before the alarm could bring the full force of the enemy. It was a task that few had dared to attempt. On a cold, starless night, the rebels set out. They moved silently through empty streets, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Sarah led a small team that included Thomas and a few brave volunteers. They traveled through dense forests and across broken roads until the distant hum of the power station reached their ears. The structure was enormous, its lights cutting through the darkness like sharp blades. The first challenge came when they reached a guarded checkpoint. The Zephyrian soldiers, tall and clad in armor that glowed faintly, patrolled in strict formation. The team crouched behind a crumbling wall, holding their breath as the patrol passed by. Sarah's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay still. Their success depended on stealth and speed. Once past the checkpoint, the rebels climbed a steep ridge that led to the base of the power station. The mountain wind was bitter, and each step was a test of endurance. They reached a side entrance, partially hidden by overgrown vines. Thomas worked quickly, disabling a simple lock system with his improvised tools. Inside, the corridors were dark and silent, filled only with the low hum of machinery. Every corner held a promise of danger, and every step deepened the tension. The team split up into smaller groups to cover more ground. Sarah and Thomas moved toward the central control room where the main power lines converged. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow hallways as they navigated past empty chambers and locked doors. The air was thick with suspense, and even the slightest sound seemed amplified. In one small room, they found evidence that other rebels had been here before, an old note scribbled on a metal panel. It read, "We are not forgotten. Our revenge begins now." This message renewed their determination. At last, they reached the central control room. Massive cables and blinking consoles filled the space, a testament to the Zephyrian technology that powered their dominion. Thomas found the spot where the main energy core pulsed with blue light. He set the explosives carefully, checking the timer twice. Sarah scanned the room, her eyes alert for any sign of an approaching guard. The timer began to tick down. Outside the control room, alarms suddenly echoed through the corridors. The team had been discovered. In a burst of chaos, Zephyrian soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised. The rebels fought back, moving quickly and decisively. Sarah ducked behind a console as she fired a salvaged laser pistol at a charging guard. Thomas shouted orders, urging everyone to cover each other and fall back to the exit. In the midst of the skirmish, the timer reached its final seconds. With a thunderous explosion, the control room was engulfed in a burst of light and smoke. The power station trembled and fell silent as the explosives did their work. The sudden loss of power sent shockwaves through the building, and the Zephyrian soldiers faltered. The rebels seized the moment. The journey back was chaotic. The explosion had triggered confusion among the enemy forces, but the rebels had to move fast to avoid recapture. Sarah led the group through narrow mountain trails, every step echoing with the memory of the battle. Behind them, the power station collapsed in a series of fiery blasts, marking the moment when the Forgotten had exacted their revenge. As dawn broke over the horizon, the rebels reached the safety of their hidden enclave. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the dark night they had endured. Though tired and wounded, the members of the Forgotten felt a surge of hope. They had struck a blow against the mighty Zephyrians, a blow that would be remembered by every human who had suffered under their rule. Sarah looked back at the smoking ruins, her heart filled with both relief and determination. The Zephyrians had taken much from humanity, but in that moment, the people realized that their spirit was unbreakable.